Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is pretend. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb pretend used is to refer to speaking or acting in order to make it appear that something is the case when in fact it is not. So, this particular usage can apply to a number of situations where someone acts in a particular way to give others a different impression, but that something really isn't true. We'll look at a few example sentences that kind of tie back to this definition in a few minutes. A second way to use the verb pretend is to mean to engage in a game or a fantasy that involves supposing that something is not the case, but again, acting like it is. So with this particular definition, I think of children, and it's extremely common and part of their development to create different situations, maybe pretend to be a particular animal or a superhero, etc. So they are really just playing and being rather creative as they're doing it. A third way you might hear the verb pretend used is mean to give the appearance of a particular feeling or that one is possessing a certain emotion. So sometimes as people go through challenges, they might feel sad or upset, but as they go to work or they go to school, they will act like they're happy or they're okay. So they're giving the impression or the appearance that they are happy when in fact they are not. You should know that pretend is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all you need to do is add ing to form pretending. To make the past tense and participle forms of this verb, you need to add an ed. The base verb, pretend, ends with a D sound. So our past tense ending is going to make an id sound. We're going to add an extra syllable to this past tense and participle form. It'll sound like this: pretended, pretended. You'll be happy to know that I don't have any additional phrasal verbs that offer different meanings or interpretations for this particular verb. So this will allow us to now move on to some example sentences, and we'll practice a couple different tenses today. Today we'll focus on the imperative and the simple present. Let's start with the imperative. You might know this as a command. It is kind of a special form because there is no stated subject in the imperative. The subject is implied. It's either you singular or you plural. So for this particular tense, I many times think about parents talking to their children, telling them to do a particular action. Might also think about teachers talking to students. It's common to see this in recipes to just be more direct in giving someone steps to follow. So we can start our affirmative sentences with the base verb, or you could add please as your first word, or please at the end, if you ever want to sort of soften and maybe make this seem less forceful or less direct. So here's an example sentence. Pretend that you didn't hear the news from me. So this usage is going to tie back to our first definition. Here, someone wants another person to act like they don't know something or act like the information didn't come from them. If you want to make a negative imperative, so you're telling someone not to do a particular action, you can use do not in the base verb, or you can use the contraction form don't in the base verb. And again, you could add please either at the beginning or the end, but you don't need it in both places to soften it or make it seem just maybe a bit more polite. So here's another example. don't pretend to be asleep. So again, this is tying back to that first definition we looked at. Maybe this is one spouse talking to another about something serious, and the other person's looking and say, okay, maybe if I'm sleepy, they'll stop talking. The person's like, no, don't pretend that you're asleep. Listen to me, talk with me, or maybe do something. We don't know the exact situation. You'll notice there are no questions in the imperative, so let's move on and talk about the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about habits and routines. We also use it to discuss facts. And to make an affirmative sentence in the simple present, we need to consider our subject. So if our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're just going to use the base verb. Now, if the subject is he, she, or it, we need to add an S to the end of this verb. So let's take a look at our affirmative example. The kids always pretend to be dinosaurs. So this will tie back to that second definition we looked at, where they're kind of engaged in a game, right? They are clearly not actual dinosaurs. If you want to make a negative simple present sentence, we'll use either do not and then the base verb, or does not and then the base verb. Here's another example. She doesn't pretend to have all the answers. Maybe this person is describing a teacher or supervisor who sometimes acknowledges, gee, I don't know the answer, but I will look it up. I will ask someone else and I'll get back to you. These have historically been my favorite teachers and my favorite supervisors when they're quite honest and open about what they know and what they believe and when they need more information. Now, if you want to make a yes or no question in the simple present, you're going to start with do or does, whichever matches your subject. Okay, so we'll use do with you, we, they. We'll use does with he, she, or it. And then we'll use the base verb. You can see that in the example here. Do they pretend to be rich? Okay. So again, this would tie back to that first definition that we looked at. So they are acting like they have a lot of money, but the truth or the reality is they don't. Now, let's spend just a couple minutes looking at words that are related to our verb. And the first word we're going to look at is the adjective form of this word. So, same spelling, same pronunciation. Pretend can also be an adjective. It can have a couple different meanings. You might use the word pretend to refer to something that is imaginary. So, again, not real. An example of that, the children are eating pretend cookies with their dolls. So again, the idea here is they are engaged in a little bit of game or creative play where they are kind of making up their own stories and doing something like that to simulate what it would look like in reality. Another meaning for this particular adjective is not genuine or not real. An example of that. The necklace is made from pretend pearls. So they are not real, not genuine pearls, but maybe plastic that has been made to look like it. The last word we'll look at today is the noun pretender. You can see that suffix er. It's indicating to us this is a person or maybe a group of people who pretends. Okay? And a way I see this noun used often is actually connected to sports. And it'll tie to our example sentence here. Is this team a contender or a pretender this season? So you might hear this phrase used often. So a contender, someone who is going to be near the top of the league in their performance, fighting for the championship, whereas a team that may have a few good games and at times act like they are that good as the contenders, but in reality, they're not. So If your team or really anything was described as a pretender, I would say that's probably not a compliment, because kind of suggesting whatever it is you think you are, or whatever you think you're doing well, you're not. So thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.